Welcome back to the class, everyone. We all know that it takes a long time to farm, gear up, and Zeta a new character. And it can be particularly frustrating when that new character or the team that new character goes on is completely boxed out of usefulness due to power creep. So what I want to talk about in today's video are 10 characters who don't really seem to have a problem with this at all and have really stood the test of time. So these 10 characters we are going to talk about, they're not just going to have stood the test of time or be timeless because they were good. Yes, they are good characters, but more importantly, the way that their kits are built, both in their actual abilities as well as in their factions above, have actually allowed them to shift between a variety of teams at different varying levels in the game, meaning that they can still have a home at the very beginning when you first farm them, but by the time the end game shifts in with Galactic Legends and Conquest characters, they haven't been completely useless and in fact are on some of the best teams for said Galactic Legend and Conquest characters. Now, just so everyone understands this structurally, the way that this is set up is that the characters we're going to be talking about that are timeless are on the very far left here, aka Piet, Bam, Malik, and Captain Rex. The characters following, this is not intended to be a recommended comp. What this is intended to show are the teams that Piet, for example, can flow through as you progress in the game. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into Piet as an example because he, quite frankly, is a really good example. As soon as you farm up Piet, and likely once you give him his Emperor's Trap Zeta, he starts to have a lot of usefulness, again, at the very beginning of the game. Because Darth Vader, you essentially get for free, and they just pair very well together because not only does Piet himself have direct callouts to Darth Vader, buffing him in some very slight ways, but he's also going to be giving 6% offense and potency per stack of Emperor's Trap, which is going to keep stacking while Vader himself is in Merciless Massacre. So if you're trying to save up a very big hit for Darth Vader and you use it on his last one, you wait until he's passed around all the characters, and he's probably taking 6 or 7 turns now. So not only does he get like this 20% potency and accuracy boost from Piet, but then he's going to have an even larger offense boost for that last hit to hopefully get the kill that you need him to get. Now, next up is going to be Emperor Palpatine, another great team early on that you can kind of fit him into. You really only don't want to do this once you get Starkiller, but that typically does happen a little later on. Again, synergizing very well with Emperor's Trap here due to the fact that Emperor Palpatine's lead is very turn meter centric, very turn meter oriented. So a lot of your Empire characters are going to be going back to back to back to back. Maybe not the same Empire character, but as long as the Empire train keeps going, then that's really all that Piet needs to get, all really that Piet needs to happen. Next up is going to be General Veers. Again, very similar concept. His leadership is all about turn meter, particularly turn meter built off of buffs, of which Emperor's Trap is a buff. So this is probably going to be his home for the most part in the mid and even later game until he eventually graduates to Lord Vader. Now, Lord Vader is interesting. He still synergizes very well with Piet, but not for the same reasons the other 3 teams have, where he doesn't necessarily have turn meter mechanics that allow him to go back to back, nor does he have a bonus turn system like Darth Vader to go back to back. Really, what you're capitalizing on is found in the leadership, where it says whenever a dark side ally loses a buff, Empire and Dark Side Unaligned Force user allies gain 1% mastery stacking. This is a really big deal because this is essentially unlimited as the battle goes on. And while this is going to get interrupted because you're going to have characters like Maul on the team who really aren't Empire at all, they're Dark Side Unaligned Force user, it still ending up being a lot in the very end, especially once you start to realize that Lord Vader is going to be taking the mastery of his allies. If they're Empire and Dark Side, it gets replenished. But at the same time, a lot of synergy overall there going with Piet. So again, he really captures what we're going for here with timeless characters in the sense that he's not only good, but he maintains good on several teams as you play through the game. Next up is going to be Beskar Armor Mando. Now, Beskar Armor Mando is a little bit different than the Piet in the sense that he actually, when you very first get him, you very first unlock him, is actually going to be able to utilize his own leadership ability with, you know, whatever scoundrels you have laying around that can go on the team. Preferably, they would be ones with AoEs so that he can get as many birds as possible for swift takedown. But as you progress through the game and as you get, say, Starkiller and you have to get Dash in order to get Starkiller, you can either use Dash Lead with a new variety of scoundrels like Vandor Churi and L3, along with Beskar Armor Mando, or you can actually maintain just Bam lead with Dash on the team because the two of them synergize very well together. Because when we look at Seeker missiles for our good friend Dash Rendar, he's actually going to be able to do an AoE that has 3 instances of damage. Meaning he's going to get 15 hits out there, assuming all of your enemies aren't dead, and he's going to be able to get 15 birds for Mando right off the bat. A feat that is typically pretty difficult, and you have to line up turns really specifically, as well as have a bunch of AoEs on the team. Dash really just kind of removes any barrier for that. And again, his leadership can be considered an upgrade in some ways, especially in GAC, where he has his own Omicron that really takes Vander Chewbacca to the next level. But at any rate, Bam still maintains his value, being able to shift between to that team. Next up are going to be 2 bounty hunter leads, where Bam is actually going to have the opportunity to challenge Lord Vader in some instances. Fennec being in GAC, her leadership, and a Boba Fett Sign of Jango being more TW oriented due to his TW Omicrons. Now, I will say this is not a great counter. Fennec, Bam versus Lord Vader Maul, it overall has like a 20-25% win rate. That being said, if you're in GAC and you're just outgunned beyond belief, and you really don't have anything else, but you have Fennec because you were going after Jabba at one point, you have Bam because he started to fill out some of your scoundrels for you, it is an option you can turn to that, again, gives Bam some overall longevity in the game where he's not just necessarily useless. Again, Sign of Jango actually counters Lord Vader much better than Fennec does in GAC, but it does come with the assumption that you're using him in TW with the TW Omicrons that really push him there. And finally, Bam is going to end up on the Bo-Katan Mandalore team as a Mandalorian. In fact, he's required for her at R7, so it's kind of a no-brainer to use them together. He does also synergize very well with the rest of her team, because one of the key components to her team is actually IG-12, who will get a Scoundrel tag if Beskar Armor Mando is there, to which you can put Wonder on the Force, giving them damage immunity, which is really nice because both of them are kind of key targets in the very beginning for a lot of different battles. So again, Bam, very good in various spots in the game. Next up is going to be Malik, and Malik, I don't want to reduce him just to a good or even great Sith tank, because while he is that, he's also so much more than that. I'm reminded of this every time that I go to watch a Bit Dynasty or Scribe video about either Galactic Challenges or Conquest, where I'm seeing him used in very unorthodox ways, because the way that his kit works, he doesn't necessarily need Sith Empire or Sith to start to become useful. Basically what it means is he will eventually gain taunt when he puts out shock, and once he is taunting, or really if any enemy uses an AoE and he is critically hit, he will then fear the enemy and taunt again and create kind of this fear cycle. Overall, again, very useful. Most people don't leave him at low relics, specifically due to Leviathan, but even at Relic 3 or Relic 5, I got a lot of use out of him in this way. And then if you actually want to look at real team comps that he does pass through outside of that plug-and-play use, there really isn't a shortage of them. Darth Revan, obviously fantastic. You get him when you get Malik, or you have to have him to get Malik, so kind of a no-brainer. Malgus, something you eventually graduate to that kind of ties in with Leviathan due to the ships. Darth Traya. I know this is a weird one, but I've seen a lot of people use Traya-led Malik in Proving Grounds to kind of punch up against some of the missions, which is really cool. And then Bane. And this one seems weird until this last Conquest series, we had to do a ton of these feats without a leader. Well, Malik, for balance reasons, I guess, doesn't actually have a leadership. So Malik-led Bane was what I used all 3 Conquest seasons to complete that feat 10 or 12 times or whatever it was, and it honestly worked really, really well. Also, he goes well in sea to stop Wampa from being in sea, so there's another home on top of all of that. Next up is Krex, and if you've heard me talk about Krex before, you know that I think he's stupid. Not that he's stupid in the sense that he's a bad character, in fact that's kind of the problem. He's a good character, but he's a good character on pretty much any team you can rationalize putting him on. Now, I will say I didn't even add Cody as the Clone Trooper lead into this setup here, but I guess you could add that too. So a lot of the problems boil down to the fact that his kit is just so universal. It's not even the fact that he has tags. It's the fact that he has tenacity down, which is always irresistible, followed by daze. And then as well, when we go into his kit, the fact that he's able to heal himself and Clone Troopers pretty consistently when they drop below 50% health. They recover not only health and protection, but then also defense on top of that. The reason why those two things become problematic is because they end up just being so universal. Obviously, it goes great with Hera due to the fact that his unique is shared amongst all the rest of the Phoenix members, and that'll be probably the first team that a lot of people end up using him on. But his utility really doesn't stop there. Once you start to fill out your Rebel fighter teams with Saw Gerrera and Mon Mothma, he fits very well on both of those as well. And then he even works well on a General Skywalker 501st team. And I know that some of you probably think that I'm crazy right now, and I would have said the same thing a year ago or so before I discovered this, because General Skywalker really wants the whole team to be 501st. In fact, he loses very specific bonuses if he is not. The issue is Krex is too good, and this actually narrows the amount of counters for Skywalker, or for General Skywalker, more than any other unit there is. Because when you have tenacity down with days, you immediately cut out, like hard cut out, the CLS counter, as well as, for some reason, Reva actually ends up being a lot worse once you put Krex in there as well. Pretty much meaning, if you have Krex with General Skywalker, you're putting your opponent into a corner where they either have to use something really heavy, like Starkiller or C, to be able to take him down. Also, he eventually can go on the Leia team, which is probably his ultimate home overall. So again, fantastic character, just goes stinking everywhere. Next up is going to be Jango Fett. And Jango Fett, there aren't that many characters in game that I've seen need a more button for their factions, which is going to be part of the reason why he is here. He really overall is just a fantastic damage dealer when you look at all three of his abilities. Both these deal good damage, and then Conflagration actually reduces max health over time, so again, another way to kind of help with timeouts. Now, when we look at the teams you can go on, they start kind of obvious, with Bossk obviously for the fact that he is he's a bounty hunter primarily, and then he can also go on Maul before you get Lord Vader, because one of the really cool things that Jango Fett will do in his unique, because he gains 50% max health, he should be the first one that's taunting, because Maul makes the most survivable Mandalorian taunt right out the gate. Then he can eat Cat's first hit, and actually allows Maul to a greater effect to counter JMK, which is probably the strongest team out there that he can beat. He also works really well at Trench, because they did this thing, and I love this. I wish they would do this more. They did this really cool thing where if he is under the leadership of a Separatist ally, he immediately gets contract. I love that. I wish they would have done this with more characters. I wish Scion of Jango under Tuskens immediately gets contract. I wish Boba Fett under Darth Vader immediately gets contract. Like, this was such a cool concept to do with kits. I really wish they would have opened it up with some other ones. But at any rate, he works great on those three teams. And then he really probably isn't the ideal 4th or 5th for Baylan, but he can be used there. If you don't want to like build up Kara or put Hondo on the team, he is a mercenary, so he doesn't really break synergy in any way. And then I guess he does more damage. So again, maybe not the best fit for Baylan, but overall has several homes as the game does continue to progress. Next up is going to be R2, a character for the longest time we refer to as a jack of all trades and a master of none. And really, he's going to be able to float between several different teams as you build them up. Obviously, he will eventually be cut out of the CLS team to put in better characters, or better characters suited for CLS, like Chupio. JTR, before most of the team graduates kind of the Zori team, he can go there as well. Padme, again, before all your Jedi get stolen by other comps, and eventually Padme herself by JMK, it's another great way to go there. As well as Sortie, which is kind of a leftover team for a lot of the requirements that you might build up, as she has a lot of those. But the reason why it works so well, and I probably should have started with this, boils down to both number crunch and combat analysis. I mean, the rest of these abilities over here are pretty good too, but the fact that he is going to allow any light side character to dispel when they crit, that's a pretty big deal, especially when overall dispels aren't exactly plentiful on some of these beginning game teams. That was something that really came along later. And then number crunch is just really nice because all those factions that we just mentioned, he's going to give them a stat boost. And ultimately, he is going to end up on the Galactic Legend Leia team, as he's actually required to unlock her, and she gives him even more bonuses once he's there for him to share with the rest of the team. Next up is going to be Crew, and we'll explain General Grievous, but Crew overall really is just a fantastic tank and had a lot of good stats ever since he came out. You can use his own leadership or Hux's leadership towards the beginning of the game in a simple First Order squad, but as you progress, you can start to use him in some more fun ways. The reason why we have General Grievous here isn't because the two of them actually synergize together. They don't. They don't synergize together really at all. However, one of the cool things that Crew can do with his halt ability, which is a 2-turn irresistible stun is he can shut down Wampa. So the reason why we have Grievous listed here is because if you see that your opponent only has one solution to one of your teams, like say Wampa versus Grievous, you can just throw Crew in there and really mess the whole thing up. Again, Crew is not necessarily going to stop all counters at all times, but anything that anyone uses Wampa on in GAC, he's going to put a hamper on. And Grievous tends to be a target for that, especially for those accounts who don't have very high relics or don't have stop on the team. He also is fantastic under Seer and arguably necessary in a lot of circumstances. One of the things that bugs me about the Seer team is that if you don't have Star Killer on the team, Crew is literally your only dispel, which becomes really problematic when you're trying to take Seer Malicos without Starkiller against Rey, because then you only have Crew specifically to dispel the crit immunity to be able to get the Inspired offer so she stops stacking Mastery. So again, if you don't have Crew or Starkiller there, you're pretty much just subjecting yourself to that the entire battle, which makes things a lot harder. Not to mention the fact that he's a good tank. And then ultimately, you end up putting him with SLKR, which we'll actually see. He might actually end up with Seer more long-term for most people, purely because it looks like My Chemical Romance actually might be doing a lot more for Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, and you won't even need Crew. But we'll figure that out when we get there. Next up is going to be Mace, and Mace Windu, I've talked a lot about Mace Windu before and how great he is, and it really comes down to several things. Number one, he's given the magical tag combo of Galactic Republic and Jedi. On top of that, he has really good tanking abilities with the fact that they've essentially just given him stats on top of what he already has naturally. But even more so, his Shatterpoint ability allows him to actually take down enemies, not just try to protect his team from them, which ultimately ends up giving him a really good home with Padme as a Galactic Republic. He doesn't really break any synergy for her. Kelleron Beck, as well as Qui-Gon Jinn, depending on TW or GAC, because again, he has the magical tags. And then finally, he actually works a little bit well on a Queen Amidala team in TW if you have a Sense Weakness Omicron, because what this is going to do is if someone brings in Bane against Queen Amidala, which is a very popular counter, then every single turn, every single ally on your side is going to get Shatterpoint, and it will have to fall on Bane because he's likely the only one alive by this point, and you'll be able to reduce a lot of his stats. Not necessarily a hard stop, because Bane can kind of still kill everyone before that gets going, but at the same time, if you can drag down the win rates of Bane, I call that a win. And then obviously, you can throw him on a JMK team in the very end game, especially against characters that are really tanky, like Kersantin on a Jabba team. Next up is going to be Gideon, and this feels a little bit like cheating because we're using more than one Imperial Trooper, but Gideon is really here more for plug-and-play reasons than he is overall for being an Imperial Trooper like Piet. The first team that you'll borrow him on will be an Imperial Trooper team, just because of his naturally high speed. It helps him get out the gate faster. Padme is another great option, purely because if you have the Control the Situation Zeta, you will have a way to give him 100% extra protection up, or rather all support characters on his team, of which Padme, R2, Shock, all fit into that description, and because of the way Padme's leadership works, that will all translate into courage, and then you can just start deleting the enemy team, especially considering when you use Control the Situation, the entire enemy lost their turn meter, but due to Padme's unique, you didn't lose any of yours. You can put him on a Lord Vader team. They both have the Empire tag. He doesn't break synergy. Lowering the enemy's offense with his Know Your Adversaries, or rather Demoralized debuff is nice, but honestly not all that normal. It is a home he can go on. Ultimately, you'll want him to be with DTMG, who's a really, really good team in TW and a pretty good team overall when it comes to GAC. So again, a lot of homes for him to transfer through without even really considering his plug-and-play viability on a team like Traya or Geos. And last, and probably most expensive, is actually going to be Cal Kestis. Now, Cal Kestis is probably one of the newer characters on this list, but he just does everything that any Jedi team could ever want. He has an armor shred, he has a cleanse that he can pretty much use every other turn. He has an instant defeat on Impetuous Assault, and really importantly, he's also going to make the entire team immune to cooldown reduction. Not to mention himself is immune to ability block, fear, and stun. So overall, just a really nice addition to really any Jedi team at any level. Bastila at the very beginning, graduating to Giant Revan, Giant Luke as well, because since he's not Old Republic, he doesn't break a lot of the synergy. And then ultimately with Jedi Master Luke as well, because Jedi Master Luke really likes it when Jedi have repost, so that they can constantly be called out of turn to assist and just kill enemies under their protection entirely. So again, overall fantastic character, doing a lot of different things at the same time, and again, you really almost always have a Jedi lead no matter where you are at in the game. So that is going to be our list of 10 timeless characters. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and what character did we miss? What character can just be used at all points in the game and is always good? But until the next time, thanks for watching, and stay awesome.